Now that's probably near the limit without making some modifications to the circuit. Now if I can do 15 kiloamps for a few seconds, now that would be pretty crazy. And it might be possible with this 3/4 inch bolt here. Here we go. You know, for as easy as it is for wires to short when you don't want them to, it's been bafflingly difficult to hold a short across these batteries. Everything just keeps blowing out of place. I've tried using all sorts of clamps and different materials, but the results are all the same. Everything breaks contact. These batteries in the ocean? Nope, not yet. I think using a higher voltage will overcome these problems, so I rewired the bank for a series parallel arrangement. Now there are chains of 5 batteries in series, then all of those are wired in parallel. This makes the fully charged bank sit at a little over 60 volts. Let's start the 60 volt experiments with another 3/8 inch steel rod. Here we go. Holy heck, that exploded! The slow-mo shows something astonishing here. The rod heated so quickly that its zinc coating boiled off faster than it could burn. And then when the rod finally exploded, it left a cloud of greenish plasma as the zinc vapor reacted with the oxygen in the air. Comparing this to what happened at 12 volts, it's clear there's substantially more current at 60 volts. Sure enough, I clocked a peak of 30,000 amps, which so happens to be the current of the average lightning strike. I still think I can do better though. Let's see what happens when I try a 1/2 inch bolt. Heh, I guess those little clamps weren't enough. I've upgraded to some big boy clamps this time, so hopefully this does the job. Damn it. I'll take that as a no. Yeah, that bolt really does not want to stay in those blocks. In fact, let's take a look here. Yeah, look at that. It just leaves like a big crater of splattering molten steel and copper. Wow. Let's see if quad clamping it will hold it in place. Heck. This was easier at 12 volts. What's going on here? Slow-mo shows the increased current has introduced a new problem. These blocks are getting ripped apart by the gayest force field in physics, the magnetic field. If you look at currents that give rise to those fields, you'll see the reverse happens to them. Opposite currents repel, and like currents attract. Now this has a lot of interesting consequences in physics. It's why lightning pinches itself into a fine streamer, and it's also the basis of experimental Z-pinch fusion reactors. In this circuit, it causes the aligned cables to bunch up, while repelling the cables carrying current in the opposite direction, and this is what's ripping apart the copper blocks. Everything down to a block of wood, we decided to stick a couple cans of 1,2-dimethylethane on the apparatus. Sticking a can upright with the hope that it would act like a rocket. It turns out this worked just a little too well. Cool and all, but they also had the function of clearing out some of that annoying grass out in front of the batteries. I went ahead and mounted everything to a big block of wood. Now let's try another 1/2 inch bolt. Here we go. Yes! Wow. It just exploded off of there. Wow. That's terrifying. Wow, look at the remnants of that bolt there. They're welded on there. Wow, it looks like it took about 1/4 of a second for that to melt through. And yeah, it peaked at over 40,000 amps. That is insane. The slow-mo shows 2 powerful magnetic effects here. There are the cables in back violently pinching themselves into a bundle, and also, there's the broken bolt fragment getting launched outward due to the magnetic forces on it. Well, if the 1/2 inch bolt melts now, maybe the 3/4 inch bolt will melt too. It melted through. Wow, that is really melted on there. Interesting how it like hollowed out the nut there. Jeez. I don't know if that one's coming off. My goodness. Yeah, that liquid steel really bonded to the copper there. Okay, there it goes. Jeez. It's funny, because as I keep trying bigger loads, sparks get launched further and further, even beyond where I'm hiding for these shots. I figured these tests would be intense, but they're already beyond my expectations. This one's gonna be pretty crazy, I think. So it's that bismuth ingot that I couldn't melt earlier. Here we go. What? Huh. I thought its own weight would be enough to hold it down, but clearly not. So I've used these spring clamps to hold it down now. Here we go. Holy heck. It made a huge mushroom cloud. There's not much of this thing left. It just splattered and vaporized all over the place. Wow. At this point in the video, pretty much all the footage is terrifying. But even so, this is probably the scariest shot so far. The batteries managed to take nearly an entire kilogram of metal and turn it into a cloud of vapor and liquid in a second. The droplets being shot out are so hot that they're burning in air, leaving little trails of smoke while raining burning molten metal on everything around it. Afterwards, I found bits of metal splattered on the trees, the sides of my shop, and even the table I was hiding behind. The impressive pyrotechnic display of the bismuth convinced me to try a stick of titanium as well. Titanium is used in fireworks for making bright white sparks. And it turns out, it makes these beautiful sparks when being zapped by 100 car batteries as well. Who would have guessed? I decided to start with a smaller crowbar here first. Here we go. Holy heck. That came all the way back here. I had to dodge it. This one gave a really cool oscillating effect as the crowbar kept breaking and then regaining contact, which made the resulting explosions especially violent. I threw in the bigger crowbar and this one burned through even faster. Here we go. Oh wow, the head of that crowbar. Oh my gosh, I just stepped on that and about burned through my shoe. Jeez. Oh yeah, that's hot. Well anyway, I was saying how the head of that crowbar there is just welded onto that. It's flattened and melted down. It's insane. I tossed some magnets in the middle of the wire loop there, and you can see them jump once the current starts. And yeah, I put my camera way too close for this shot. Now something that sticks out to me here is when the crowbar finally burns through, and it shoots out a big plasma fireball. My bet is that inductive kickback is playing a role here. I figure zapping a couple wrenches ought to be fun, the small one. Alright, here we go. This big one should be nice and scary. Wow, that one got real toasty. Look how welded that thing is on there. This is going to be crazy. I hope those clamps survive. Did that melt all the way through? So it just melted the steel around the threads there. That's crazy. I didn't see that happen with the smaller bolts, so that's what kept it from melting all the way through. It's just floating in the middle. All right, I'm gonna try it with the without the nut, just the bare bolt in there. And here we go. Whoa! That was so loud. I don't even know what exploded there. It was the fuses that blew. Look at that, they melted straight through. Wow, that drew over 45,000 amps, and it did it for over a second. Well, at least before the fuses exploded. That is bonkers! I'm actually glad that the fuses exploded here, because it gives a cross-reference for the currents I'm measuring. The Priest fuse current equation predicts that a bank of 10 6-gauge wires in parallel will last a second at 50,000 amps before exploding. And that's pretty much what I just saw. I'm only surprised how loud it was. I upgraded the fuses to 4-gauge, but at this point the batteries are really being abused. So I'm going to do some other experiments before trying the big bolt again. Some magnetite there inside that loop of wire. That way you can visualize the magnetic field. Yeah, it really sticks to those cables. I've placed the wire loop below a plastic tray for this shot. It's crazy how quickly the magnetite orients itself near the wire. But then again, the magnetic field here is probably a solid fraction of a Tesla. By attaching some LEDs to a coil of wire and placing it near the cables, I can get some rudimentary transformer action. Those LEDs are being wirelessly powered by the alternating magnetic field. I have this big old SCR here, which is a type of solid-state switch. I want to try popping it with the batteries. Here we go. As expected, nothing happens yet because the SCR is off and it holds back the battery voltage. It's funny because I'm used to silicon dying when looking at it wrong since I'm terrible at electronics. However, the SCR was unaffected by this. The explosion was actually just the cables popping out of the contacts because they're only jammed in there. Let's give that another try. The magnetic field shredded the whole setup before there was enough time for the SCR to pop, conducting an astonishing 45,000 amps and snapping one of the mounting bolts in the process. That is one tough piece of silicon. I mounted everything back in the wooden block to keep it in place. Let's try that again. And yeet. It turns out, the SCR had already failed short from the previous run, which is why it immediately blew up when the battery voltage was applied. Key graphite rods to some cable. I'm going to try initiating an arc by tapping them together. Apply a really heavy neutral density filter. That way you can hopefully see what that arc looks like. Now it's hard to tell, but that arc's actually getting huge. It's like hitting the ground there. That's not just from the splatter from the burning electrodes. The arc is gigantic. The magnetic field keeps throwing it around. Huge bolt that I couldn't melt earlier. Alright, I've got a fresh new 1-inch bolt in there. Hopefully this time will be the charm. Here we go. Yes! Oh, it melted. Oh, look at that. It finally burned through. Wow! There's so much heat coming off of that right now. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the radiation coming off of that bolt lit that wood on fire. Wow! That thing got hot. I clocked a peak of just a hair under 50,000 amps there. That's quite a bit more than the average lightning strike, and for a much longer duration too. Total circuit power there was on the order of 3 megawatts.
You should not
replicate the effect. I rigged up some pipe with fuses to prevent the pipe from melting all the way through. With each trial, I made the fuse thicker and thicker, which allowed the pipe to heat more and more with each run. I was achieving currents of over 40,000 amps, and the fuses were detonating in these trials. Unfortunately, there was no pipe crushing, even when I let the pipe itself pop from the current. It turns out, it was the